I say this more than cordially, I say it truthfully. It is a pleasure to be able to address you today because I welcome any and every opportunity to engage in candid and constructive dialogue about corruption and how we can combat it. Corruption, by its very definition, is a distortion of something that is intended to be the standard. It is an abuse of both trust and power. It is an exploitation of the weaknesses and the gaps in our system. Corruption is a stain on our society, is an enemy of our progress as a nation. Corruption undermines the very principles of democracy, principles in which I believe and hold dear, both personally and politically. It is interesting to note that each president of this country has been accused at one time or the other of being corrupt or of allowing corruption to persist. The question is, were those allegations based on reality or an incorrect perception or a false belief? I'm not by any stretch of the imagination implying that corruption does not exist. We all know that it does in every nation, and I dare say in every institution and organization, governmental as well as non-governmental. The one thing I think we can agree on, both as perception and as reality, the one thing those consistent allegations reveal is that corruption in Ghana has become institutionalized. This should be of great concern to all of us. What NACAP offers us and offers Ghana is an initial blueprint, a practical operational mobility in our battle against corruption. And it pleases me to announce that finally, this past July, NACAP was unanimously adopted by Parliament. Mr. Chairman, I have consistently stated that it is my belief that our most reliable resource, and indeed our greatest weapon in this battle against corruption, is the people of Ghana. So however detailed and impressive a strategy we devise with NACAP, it can only succeed with the full participation of the people of Ghana. What I mean when I say the full participation of the people is an understanding of roles we play in the continuation of corruption and an acceptance of our individual responsibility in ending it. We should also be asking, how does my silence make me complicit in the perpetuation of corruption? How do I contribute to the culture that sustains it? Institutionalized corruption, as is often seen in developing countries, with Ghana being no exception, relies on a culture of silence and tacit acceptance. If we're going to talk honestly about corruption, then we must address the way in which some of the accepted social expectations and practices place people in compromising positions. I make no excuse for public officials and others who engage in acts of corruption, but we must also realize that when we place undue pressure on individuals by making unrealistic requests and demands, when we ask people to subvert the system with their influence, we are actually initiating the process and becoming active participants in fueling corruption. There's a reason why rules exist. Customs checks ensure, among other things, that illicit drugs and weapons do not find their way onto our streets. Codes for building safety permits ensure that houses, offices, and shops don't collapse and kill people. There's a cost attached to every act of corruption, and more often than we can imagine, that cost is the destruction or the loss of a human life. As a country, we are in no position to dismiss the efficacy of entire institutions. The fact that a few individuals out of the hundreds of people who make up the government have engaged in acts of corruption does not mean an entire government is corrupt and unable to efficiently perform. It rather means that once we have weeded out the corrupt individuals, we must examine our systems. We must strengthen the weaknesses. We must close the gaps that exist within our institutions to ensure future acts of corruption cannot occur. But in so doing, we must remember that we live in a democracy and we must abide by the rule of law. There are procedures in place to investigate acts of corruption and to deal with any perpetrators. We cannot accuse them, deem them somehow guilty based solely on our perception or on rumor and gossip. We Ghanaians have always recognized and respected the honor that can be carried within a family name. For many people, that is all they have to hand down to their children and to their grandchildren. That is the sum total of their legacy, and we have to be careful not to destroy it with recklessness and snap judgments based on unsubstantiated allegations. But trust me when I tell you that when it has been legally determined that individuals are guilty of acts of corruption, they will be punished to the full extent of the law. As of July 2013, over 300 individuals have been in some form of remand or conviction for corruption-related and related offenses. In respect to allegations of corruption at the Ghana Youth Employment and Entrepreneurial Development Authority, GYDA, there are ongoing prosecution of public officials involved, including former high-ranking officials. Service providers who breached the terms of their contract are being held to account to refund the monies to government. But does this mean that GYDA and all the positive work that it was intended to do in our communities must now be abandoned? The same question can and should be asked of the Savannah Accelerated Development Authority, SADA. An audit report revealed many loopholes in the financial administration procedures of this organization, and so audit recommendations were made. Based on this, I dissolved the old board and appointed a new board and a new acting chief executive to implement those recommendations. There's no reason why SADA cannot now move forward and continue to fulfill its mandate. As for other recent allegations of corruption, following audits that confirmed weaknesses in our payroll administration and specific tip-offs given by a whistleblower, I requested the BNI to conduct forensic investigations into the National Service Secretariat payroll. Prosecutions are currently ongoing, and remedial measures to plug the loopholes are being put in place. The new administration of the National Service Scheme has decided that all allowances paid to national service persons are to be paid on an e-switch biometric platform to eliminate any fraud in the system. This cleaning of the national service payroll will extend to the larger government payroll and will also include organizations that receive subvention from government. Just this week, the Vice President inaugurated a payroll task force. This task force, working on a prepared action plan, will ensure the cleaning of the payroll and thereby enhance its integrity. It will also ensure that every public servant on the payroll is genuine and has earned the remuneration they are receiving. I'm also writing to all ministers and giving them deadlines for the implementation of the Auditor General's report as it pertains to their various MDAs. Failure to implement the Auditor General's report by the deadline given will attract severe sanctions on the minister concerned. In the interest of transparency, I would like to inform you that I received 3 petitions in relation to the Commissioner of the TRASH, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. I forwarded these petitions to her ladyship, the Chief Justice, as required by the Constitution, who I'm certain will deal with the matter appropriately. TRASH is an institution that is vital to this nation and to our battle against corruption. We cannot afford to dismiss the entire institution as corrupt because of allegations of abuse of power that have been leveled against a single individual, allegations that are still being investigated. We must base our perceptions of this institution not on gossip and rumors, but on the realities of its stellar record. The implementation of NACAP will form part of the performance appraisal of ministers, chief directors, and chief executive officers of state institutions from 2015 onwards. Various codes of conduct have been launched by the executive, the judiciary, the Attorney General's office, the police service, and other public sector institutions to guide public officers in the administration of their duties. However, the Conduct of Public Officers Bill is currently before Parliament. When this bill is enacted into law, it will deal with issues of conflict of interest and provide stricter guidelines for our assets declaration regime. Other bills pending before Parliament are the Right to Information Bill, on which there has been some progress towards enactment, and the Whistleblowers Amendment Bill. It is my hope that Parliament will do its best to pass these bills as soon as possible. Ghana is also signed up to the Open Government Partnership. This is a multilateral initiative whereby governments make a set commitment to promote transparency, to fight corruption, empower their citizens, and harness new technologies to strengthen governance. Mr. Chairman, Transparency International recently released its Corruption Perception Index for 2014. Quiet as it has been kept by our media, Ghana's placement on this index has improved. Out of 175 countries and territories, Ghana ranked 61st. We also received an overall score of 48, that is out of a possible 100, with 0 being the lowest and indicating a high level of corruption, and 100 being the highest. Transparency International explains that of the countries and territories that it judges, not one single country gets a perfect score, and more than 2/3 score below 50. In 2013, we received a score of 46. In 2012, we had received a score of 45. This year, we received a score of 48, indicating that our improvement, though gradual, is steady. And I hope that the conversations that will take place here will be candid. I expect that participants will find ways of building consensus on the implementation of the short to medium-term programs of action under NACAP. And in closing, I would like to express my appreciation to the effort of all Ghanaians, individuals and groups who have shown concern about and interest in tackling corruption head-on. I want you to know that I share your passion. We can win this battle against corruption. The power to do so rests in each of our hands. I thank you for your kind attention, and God bless our homeland, Ghana.